I take this opportunity to welcome you back again to Flockel Show, a show that promised to do three things: to inform, to share, and to educate. In January 2025, or early January 2025, Flockel Show made a video on the legal implementation status of CBC, and we highlighted some of the bills that were necessary to be enacted into law, which we again showed you viewers that are still on the Ministry of Education websites. Why the bills? Because when the President formed a task force to review the CBC status of implementation, the report was presented to the President in 2023. Attempts of education stakeholders going to implement the recommendations of the task force from the Presidential Working Party on Education Reform were met with a lot of opposition, and the people went to court and they stopped that. And again, Parliament, through the Speaker of the National Assembly, spoke and gave its status that whatever attempts that are done towards implementing the task force recommendations without going through the Parliament is null and void. In other words, it is just unconstitutional. So the Presidential Working Party on Education report was produced. Attempts to implement it on the ground was stopped by some litigants and also the Parliament. And this is what led to, again, the Ministry of Education sitting down and trying to look at how well these recommendations of the task force can go through the Parliament and be implemented. And it is for that reason a number of bills are on the Ministry of Education's website. Remember, in any change, there must be stakeholder. All what is on the Ministry of Education website is the stakeholder copies. In the hierarchy of law, we say the Constitution is supreme. And then there comes the Acts of Parliament. From the Acts of Parliament, then we can have the regulations which are formulated by the Ministry, which are again delegated. The confusion comes here that the Committee on Education in Parliament wants to see the Ministry move ahead and form some policies and guidelines, yet there is no Act of Parliament which is going to enforce this. And so, the back and forth. And for that reason, Flockel Show has come almost after 3 months to find out what is now the position after we presented our video. Move with me and let us try to reason. Now I'm on the Ministry of West website where we have these documents: invitation for public participation and the submission of memoranda on the proposed session of paper and bills in the education sector. And this is the reason. They state that on 1st August 2023, the Presidential Working Party on Education Reform report on transforming education, training, research for sustainable development in Kenya was launched by His Excellency the President of the Republic of Kenya, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Defense Forces. The Ministry of Education therefore embarked on the process of developing the draft policy and legislative proposals which are necessary for the implementation of the PWPER report recommendations. Commander-in-Chief, now these are the bills. It is hereby notified for the general information of the public that the Ministry has finalized the presentation of the draft proposals, which include: number one, we have session of paper on policy framework for Education Reforms in Kenya 2024. Number 2, we have the Basic Education Bill 2024. Then there is another one, the Basic Education Scholarships and Bursaries Bill 2024. Then we have the Education Appeals Tribunal Bill 2024. And then we have the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development Amendment Bill 2024. Then we have the Kenya National Examinations Council Amendment Bill 2024. Then we have the Kenya Literature Bureau Amendment Bill 2024. We have the Technical and Vocational Education Training Bill 2024. Then we have the Kenya National Qualifications Framework Amendment Bill 2024. The Universities Bill 2024. The Tertiary Education Placement and Funding Bill 2024. And the Science, Technology and Innovation Amendment Bill 2024. Remember, this was the position as at January when I was presenting the legal implementation status of competency-based curriculum. Pursuant to Article 10 and 232 of the Constitution, the Ministry of Education hereby invites stakeholders and members of the public to submit written memoranda of any input they may have on the policy and legislative proposals set out above. Now, the submission may be addressed to the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Education, PO Box, and the box is given, and then or may be hand-delivered to the Ministry of Education office at Jogoo House B in Nairobi, any Ministry of Education in the counties, or emailed to legaleducation.go.ke to be received not later than Friday 15th of March 2024. Remember, this is Friday 15th of March 2024. Flockel Show presented the legal implementation status of CBC in January 2025. You realize this is approximately a year or so. So we assume that by now, all those proposals, maybe memoranda, have already been given to the ministry. Copies of the proposed session of paper and bills are available on the Ministry of Education website. Now, the purpose of this presentation is now to find out what was in the ministry and what is in Parliament. Because in the hierarchy of law, we know there is no policy which will be developed in the ministry without being embarked by an act of Parliament. So if these bills do not become acts of Parliament, we still have ministers and ministry officials being called by the Parliamentary Education Committee to explain reasons why CBC has not been done, a few things, and all that kind of thing. We are presenting this so that we can know who is supposed to be held accountable as per the Constitution. Because the ministry has given the drafts. They are supposed to go to Parliament. And I think you watched my other videos. One was on civic education, and the other one was who is an education stakeholder. Because even in this memoranda would have only been presented if people know that they are stakeholders. If you don't know, you might not even know that it is addressed to you. And it is for that reason Flockel Show gave that video on stakeholders. The other video which Flockel Show emphasized was on bail. The procedure of how bills are formulated, when do they go to Parliament, how are they debated in Parliament, first reading, second reading, third reading, what happens after that, what in case the two chambers do not agree. This is what Flockel Show presented. We were doing this so that now when we come to question this, we are able to know, are we really the stakeholders to question this? Do we understand what a bill is? And why is it that we cannot implement a task force report? Before I move on, I would like to mention the following. Task report is not a legal document which can go to be implemented, but there are proposals which find their way to Parliament for the formulation of acts of Parliament, which again will be acted. We also have something else we call framework. When we have frameworks, again, they are anchored on the Act of Parliament. We also have what we call session of papers. Session of papers, most of the time, they are also developed and presented to Parliament so that they can become legal policies of the ministry. But what is very important is, before we do anything, before ministry goes on to embark on changing anything, we need to have the Act of Parliament, which will now support the changes that will go on. Remember, we also have other agencies of the education, the Teacher Service Commission. There was a bill, Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development. So we need now to know, whom do we hold accountable? Our next video will be a tour to Parliament, and we find out what is the status of these bills. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you for viewing Frokil Show. Remember, once we share, we educate one another. We want to move the CBC implementation procedure to speed so that we don't have confusion come January 2026. Thank you so much, and continue viewing our